I'm Kevin Shaw, and you're watching the Watercraft Journal. Although I'm very hesitant to actually do so, what I consider one of the nicest gestures by readers and fans of the magazine is being invited to participate in several group rides and events throughout the year. But more often than not, I typically turn down these offers because, well, frankly, my schedule makes it impossible to attend more than one a month, and two, they're with folks that I just don't know personally. Now that might come off wrong, but that's truly the case. Over the years, I've blindly attended events that were so poorly planned, absent of any leadership, or filled with such dangerously unskilled riders that I felt that my personal safety was at a genuine risk. After the third or fourth close call, I made it a policy to know who I was riding with before jumping in the water with them. I say all of that to set the stage for today's ride. Joe Cornette of the Great Lakes Ski Riders had been a dog with a bone. I had already turned down several offers from him over the year, each one more elaborate than the last. Knowing that I was a car guy at heart, he promised me a waterfront tour of Motor City, stops by Henry Ford's waterfront homes, and past many of the plants that had built the American auto industry. Okay, I thought, this guy knows his audience. This industrial crane operator had the sales acumen of a high-tier New York stockbroker. We negotiated a little through text messages. Okay, we're gonna ride 300 miles in 2 days, he began. I can only do 1 day. All right, he'd write back. 1 day, but we're hitting 3 lakes and doing over 200 miles. Okay, that sounds good, I said. Now, am I bringing extra fuel on board, or there'll be a bunch of fuel stops? Oh no, just 2 fuel stops, so you gotta bring fuel. And snacks. We're not stopping for lunch either. Oh yeah, and it gets pretty rough out there. Oh dang, this guy really knows his audience. That Saturday morning, we launched out of Elizabeth Park Marina in Trenton, Michigan.
We're here with the Great Lakes Ski Riders. It's a little misty, it's a little cold, but we got a good group of 11 guys, so I think we're in good shape. We got just a hair over 200 miles lined up for us, so we're gonna take them out. We'll see you soon.
There was 11 of us, mainly supercharged Sea-Doos, bright yellow RX PXs and RX TXs, a pair of SVHO-powered Yamaha FXs, and of course my lone 2023 Kawasaki Ultra 310LX. Nearly all of Joe's group rode modified machines, capable of speeds in the high 70s, if not low 80s, when given glassy enough conditions. The Cowie, on the other hand, was showroom stock, save for the auxiliary fuel system of my own design strapped to the elongated deck. This put my top speed somewhere around 64 miles per hour, given the added 80 pounds on the rear. With heavy fog overhead and a fishing tournament congesting the route, our group was delayed no less than a half an hour. With Joe's signal, we rode around Gross Island to Devil's Mouth in Livingston Channel. The water was surprisingly turquoise and gently lulling. We headed south from Livingston Channel to Lake Erie, marking our first of 3 lakes. From there, we proceeded north to Amherstburg, Ontario, Canada, and the old amusement park, Boblo Island.
This is Boblo Island. There used to be an amusement park here. Lots of really cool stories. They actually have a really neat dance hall that Henry Ford paid for. Did a little bit of research on it. It's pretty cool stuff. And unfortunately, all the rides are gone, but this used to be an amusement park island for over 100 years. It was opened up in the late 1890s, closed in 93, actually 92, and then got all the old rides and everything off of it in 93. And they've got some homes on here. There's some millionaire homes and some mansions and big apartment complexes and stuff. But other than that, the place is totally vacant. But yeah, lots of really cool history here. It's really kind of a neat thing. They used to have a ferry that would take a couple minutes to go back and forth here. We'll take you around the dock and show you a little bit. I think that's the dance hall. And over there, that big white building, that used to be the carousel, and then they made it into a roller rink about 50 or 60 years later. And this used to be the main dock, the main entrance.
Leaving Boblo, we rode into Crystal Bay and followed the narrow paths into the Canadian side of Hidden Lake, where the water bubbles up from a natural spring, resulting in an almost Caribbean blue hue. It's an unexpected sight, to be sure. Leaving the way we came in, we cruised north to Wyandotte, Michigan, where the Detroit River begins. We followed the Detroit River up to where we made the mistake of turning into Rogue River, which at its end is the old Henry Ford estate.
Well, this is the Henry Ford house, and we are probably way too far into it, but that's it. Pretty wild.
Excited to see this timeless piece of American history, I was unprepared for what came next. John Repack, who I had been shadowing the entire length of the ride thus far aboard his Stage 2 tuned FXS VHO, cautioning that venturing up the river wasn't worth the risk. The Rogue River is some of the most polluted water I'd ever had the displeasure of sluicing through, and only a couple of weeks earlier, John himself had sucked up some debris, clogging his pump to a standstill. And true to his caution, it was my turn to jam up my pump. The invading object was a sheared off 8-inch strip of white polyester plastic that wound itself between the blades of the impeller and the vanes of the stator, effectively blocking a third of the Cowie's pump. I signaled to Eric Moyse, owner of Monster Performance, that I was jammed and he motioned toward a small launch ramp along the cemented riverbanks. I pulled the ski's tail up on the hardened ramp and assessed the clog. Yep, I thought to myself, that nozzle's got to come out. Had any of us brought a long, and I mean a really long, set of needle-nose pliers, we might have been able to extract the debris out of the way. But without the tools on hand, the nozzle and venturi needed to be removed just to reach it. But before I could begin the disassembly, Joe had radioed for help and a prepared land crew quickly arrived to our location. Within minutes, I had the reverse bucket and linkages detached and the venturi and steering nozzle removed. With a pair of vice grips, the stubborn plastic was removed and the pump assembly was reinstalled with all fresh thread sealant. The whole ordeal ate up about an hour of the group's day, to which I was sorely embarrassed, but not nearly as frustrated as John was, who was the lone voice of warning before even doing so.
All right, pumps together. Everyone's ready to go. That was an experience, but at least we got it done and dialed. Had plenty of tools, lots of support. Guys are on a good operation. I like that. Let's get out of here. It's freezing.
With the pump freed and the Cowie operating at peak ability, we sped back out into the Detroit River towards the Ambassador Bridge, headed toward Canada. Here the river roiled into an inky black wash of 4-foot cross-chop. Eager to push the Ultra, I pinned its throttle and maxed out its trim. Only John, a former motocross rider and master mechanic, could keep pace. The two of us sprinted underneath the Ambassador Bridge, all with the downtown Detroit skyline on one side of the river and Casino Windsor on the other. As the river narrowed, boat traffic multiplied exponentially and churned the already tumultuous water into a minefield. John led, leaping the wakes of massive yachts as they passed by. I, with my fuel rack, decided against any acrobatics and zigzagged the wakes gracefully as a drunken rhinoceros.
Well, if you wanted to know if the long hauler kit worked, it's completely dry. But I'll tell you what, full bars on a Cowie, and we got Yamahas that are on 2 bars right now. Now, mind you, the Yamaha gauge is a little screwy, so that's not really fair. But she's taking it like a champ. I'm loving it. And we got some good rough water action, and we're gonna have even more. So it's gonna be something. This will be fun.
The remainder of the group were well behind us, so the two of us proceeded on to Belle Isle, where we waited to refuel at the marina.
First fuel stop complete. Took $97, 16.2 gallons. So some of the Sea-Doos are doing a little better. They're putting about 12 to 14 in, depending on how hot they run. Yamaha did a little less. Figures. He's got stage 2 plus, and he's still doing better fuel mileage than a stock Cowie. That kind of makes sense.
John and I had an unspoken agreement that we were going to ride hard regardless of the circumstances, and being that I was something of a guest, I felt obliged to deliver. Throughout the day, he inquired how fast I was going, to which I'd say, 55 or 63, and he'd shake his head in disbelief. I explained to him, yeah, you're seeing faster speeds than me, but you're in the air half the time. I'm keeping up with you while consistently running low 60s because I'm always hooked up. The Cowie almost never leaves the water, while the Yamaha is almost always airborne. This was no better proven than after we fueled up and proceeded into Lake St. Clair, the second lake on our trifecta.
Okay, so funny story. This used to be the ferry that took people to the Boblo Island amusement park years ago. And as part of the restoration project that had kind of started up and failed, they wanted to restore this ferry. A lot of people have a lot of memories on it. They thought it'd be really cool. So they brought it over here to be restored, and as soon as they brought it in, it caught on fire. So the restoration project is kind of stalled.
While certainly cleaner water and impressively blue, wind-blown whitecaps whipped the lake into Pacific Ocean levels of surf. Local rider Brian Chikanowski on his RX-PX took the lead. Before really hitting the rough stuff, Brian pulled us over by the more well-known Ford estate.
Well, we got another Henry Ford location. This is Ford Cove. This is Henry Ford's other mansion. I'm sure there's probably a couple others. That's pretty wild.
From there, Brian charged hard and cut a path through the middle of Lake St. Clair, heading towards the Cattail Trails in Muscatmoot Bay and Canadian Straits. Here, Brian pinned the Sea-Doo's throttle and led us through the grassy trails. Now, I won't say that the Ultra was a little out of its element, but I will say it took quite a bit of body English to get the Cowie to roll on its inside rail to manage some of the tighter corners that we took. Trimming the nose down and dropping a knee into the footwell was mandatory if I didn't want to park the Gold LX into the weeds. After a quick buzzing from a friendly seaplane, we headed to Harson's Island, where we refueled again and pressed forward through Lake St. Clair and entered into the St. Clair River.
Second fuel stop. Took a little less than last time, but thankfully this stop had 93. Previous only had 89, so Kawasaki's gonna be a little happier with that.
The river's waters calmed and the group's speed increased, with John and I leading the way. Thankfully, John had the route mapped because I certainly had no idea where we were going. We cruised all the way up to the St. Clair River, stopping occasionally to regroup and study the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. We were headed in the opposite direction, so we carried on. With throttles pinned again, we entered the opening of Lake Huron, our third and final lake, and were absolutely floored by the conditions we found. Lake Huron was absolutely gorgeous. The waters looked identical to the tropical blue of the Gulf running along the Florida coastline. Glassy rollers beckoned us to race the last 17 miles toward our goal. John's FX SVHO screamed as it skittered along the lake, and the big Kawasaki's Root-style supercharger howled as it gave chase.
Well, as luck would have it, broke another mount, lost a GoPro, because GoPro floats don't float.
With a slightly modified prototype of the Watercraft Journal's auxiliary fuel system strapped to the back, I really never once dipped below 3/4 of a tank on the fuel gauge this whole trip. Only now, as we sprinted towards Lexington, Michigan, where the launch ramp marked our finish line, did the fuel meter dip closer to half a tank. Then again, it didn't really matter, we were almost home. The rock outcropping of the marina's breakwater came into view. I coasted up to the no-wake zone, happy to have ran the entirety of the day entirely wide open and standing on my own 2 feet. Most rode sitting down, and only John and I rode like the devil himself was chasing us.
All right, we're 8 miles away from Lexington, which is our final stop. Puts us over 200 miles according to these guys. Done a lot of riding in rough. Unfortunately lost almost all my footage. So Joe's gonna help me out. He's got a little bit of GoPro footage. And I think I grabbed a little bit off the transom, so we'll see if I have any GoPro footage of the white caps and the rough stuff. They literally went over to the beach to hang out at the beach, so who knows what's going on. So far the count has been 1 lost GoPro, 1 broken mount. I tore the top off my sunscreen. Got my front bin all wet. Front storage bin is not waterproof. Got my camera bag sopping wet. Broke a couple mounts in the camera bag because of how rough it was. And what else have I broken or lost or screwed up? Amazingly, the rack stayed on great. Rack didn't move, didn't budge, didn't move an inch. So that's great. Gone through quite a bit of gas.
Yeah, I got it.
But yeah, we got about 8 miles left, and then we're looking down the barrel of a steak dinner.
Oh yeah, and I think I sprained my wrist in the process too because it swelled up like a balloon that night. John idled up to the dock where I was tying up and nodded with approval, saying, "Well, you proved a stock Kawasaki can run with a modified Yamaha in the rough. Looks like you made a believer out of me." But on the bright side, no water bottle bounced out of the cup holders, and the auxiliary fuel system kit never once failed me or even backed off its mounts. All the while, another brand's very expensive cargo rack loaded with 2 6-gallon shirt cans broke free from the back of an FX Cruiser and sank to the bottom, costing the owner quite a few bucks. All in all, Joe delivered an incredibly challenging and thereby thoroughly enjoyable day. True to his word, we had 0 whiners or complainers, a group of hardened riders who pushed through some serious chop, riding across 3 lakes and 2 rivers, touching 2 countries, and totaling 238 miles. So I gotta give huge thanks to Joe, Gabrielle, and the Great Lakes ski riders for showing me an awesome time. So if you're looking for a group who actually deliver on a challenging ride and are as organized as any race director, you'll be hard-pressed to find a finer group than these boys. I'm Kevin Shaw, and you've been watching the Watercraft Journal. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, leave a comment, and share it with your friends. It'll definitely help us grow the channel. And if you want more awesome jet ski content, please visit us over at www.watercraftjournal.com, where new articles are written and published every day, Monday through Friday, entirely subscription free to you. We'll see you there.